Live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Everyone, this is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. That is a live shot there of Lincoln City. That is from our Chinook Winds camera, and I got to say, it looks pretty awesome out there. And we're going to be talking about the ocean during this segment. Once again, as I mentioned, I'm Greg. This is Fox 12 Now. We start live streaming here every weekday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, and we are on Facebook, YouTube, our website, and our app. So lots of places to find the segments that we have. I always like to remind everyone that downloading the Fox 12 Oregon app is a great way to watch everything that we do here. But something we're covering, something you probably heard about a little bit earlier this week, and that is rip currents. There was actually a report of two teenagers and a dog who were swept out just near Cannon Beach earlier this week. They did safely make it back to shore, all of them, but it brings up a good point of knowing what to do should you encounter something like this. And I guess at the beginning even, what is a rip current? What's a rip tide? What do you do if you run into this? How do you identify them? We're going to answer those questions today. Joining us, we have Charles Loos, of course, the ocean coach. And Charles, thank you very much for joining us here today. And I've loved our segments that we've done before, by the way, for anybody who wants to watch some previous ones. We've covered safety on the water and at the beach, but this is one that certainly I think always needs a little bit more education on, and for myself as well. So thanks for being here. I think, to start off, can you just maybe give us a definition of what is a rip current?
Well, Greg, it's always a pleasure to be here. And I was so pleased to see the news story talk about a rip current instead of a rip tide. That's real progress. These things are currents. They have nothing to do with the tides whatsoever. And to just kind of simplify this for your viewer, really all it is water running downhill. It's nothing more than that. There's some scary words around there like undertow. That's really a misnomer. There is no current on the beach that is going to drag you under. You can just put that to bed, okay? You'll see undertow signs and all that, but there's nothing that's going to drag you under. These currents will drag you out into the ocean, but nothing will drag you under. Why don't you put on that first slide, Greg?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and pull that up. And I think, just before we do, really quick, something that you mentioned there. So a rip current versus a rip tide. There is no such thing as a rip tide.
A rip tide is a misnomer. It's like calling it the Willamette Valley or Oregon instead of the proper name. So really, a rip current is what you want to call it.
Gotcha. Okay, good to know on that. So here we go. We've got our first slide here. Taking a look at this.
This is such a great shot. So this is an aerial shot, and for scale, the umbrellas, you can see the umbrellas and the pedestrians on the beach. And what they did is they threw some green dye in the water, and you can see how it flows along the beach and heads out to sea. That is a classic rip current. And all that's going on here is that the waves pile up a little bit of water on the beach, just a little higher water level than you might otherwise have. Water wants to run downhill. So it kind of flows along the beach until it finds a bit of a deep spot. And you can see that very clearly. The green dye flows along, it hits that deep spot, and whoosh, out it goes to sea. And that's all it is. And as that current goes out, it tends to cut a deeper channel. So this thing gets a little bit stronger as time goes on. But it's pretty evident there from what you see that's how that works.
So understanding that it's a section that's just deeper, really right there. So that's why the water is running essentially downhill right there. So is there any specific kind of weather event or atmospheric event that can cause those to happen?
It has nothing to do with the tide whatsoever. It has to do with the height of the waves. When the waves are bigger, the rip currents are generally worse. The waves are really tiny. We don't usually see them. They last from anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour or so. So really, it's the wave action that drives the generation of rip currents.
Okay, so it's the wave action. All right, I may ask that again too here towards the end, just to recap that. So looking at that, again, we have the really good idea there of seeing what it is. So that obviously we're not going to have the green dye at the beach, but getting an understanding there of what's happening. So what's the next important thing to know?
Well, I'd like your viewers to look at that picture and mentally remove the red dye and see if they can see what the clues are, where a rip current is. One clue is there's a gap in the waves. You can see that. That's classic indicator of a rip current. And you can also see that the water is darker there in that channel. It's just because it's a little bit deeper. So if they mentally remove the green dye and look for the other markers while they're on the beach, they're actually fairly easy to spot. In fact, if you go to the next slide, let's try that. There you go. Now, there's a classic down near the bottom. Oops.
Put it back
You
up
can,
there. There we go.
yeah, you can see the dark channel, and you can see the gap in the waves down near the bottom. And that is a rip current. It's not very difficult to spot.
Yeah. So, and this is something that even if you're walking along, I mean, obviously from this higher vantage point, it's a little bit easier to see, but this is something that you would even notice if you're walking along the coastline.
Absolutely. Once you've seen them, you can't unsee them, and you'll see them, very quickly. Why don't we go to the next slide? There you go. Now, this one's a little more subtle, but you do see a gap in the waves there, and that is a classic rip current.
And so that's where the water is going to be like pulling downhill. So something that you could, if you were standing there, it would feel like it's pulling you out.
And it will pull you out. And some of these things are pretty powerful. They can create a current of up to 5 miles an hour. That's pretty rare, but certainly 2 or 3, which is faster than you can swim. It's generally fruitless to try and swim against a rip current because they're probably faster and stronger than you. But there are ways to get out of them. Why don't we go to the next one?
Okay, we'll go ahead and take a look here at this just to give another idea. So again, seeing that, that cloudy water there. So that's what we're looking at.
Well, there's actually a couple different flavors of rip currents. This one has the cloudy water, and that's just a churned up sand that gets swept out with the heavy current. The other ones we showed earlier they were cutting a channel. So you'll see both.
Gotcha. Sorry, here, I'll put you back up on there. But yeah, taking a look there, I can definitely see how that's coming through. So again, these are things to look out for when you're walking there on the coast and trying to keep an eye out for this.
Yeah. And plan A with your kids, your dogs, everybody is just keep them out of these rip currents. And once you learn to spot them, they're pretty easy to spot. So stay out of them. If you see your kids splashing along the shore and you see a rip current forming around them or they're getting close to one, you just gently go down and urge them to go, 50 yards north or south, and they should be fine. And actually, these rip currents are not just evil. Surfers love them because it's a free ride back out. You ride a wave in, and instead of paddling out, you jump in a rip current and get a ride. Or if you're launching a kayak off the beach, it's a great way to go. So they have their pluses and minuses.
Right. So some advantages there if you're going to be doing something like that. And so how often do these occur, say, on the Oregon coast?
I'd say on most sandy beaches, under most surf conditions, you're going to see some. Anytime the surf is above 3 or 4 or 5 feet, you're probably going to see some. And they may be in the same place day after day. They may move around a little bit. Like I say, they're fairly ephemeral. And really the job is to identify the rip current of the day, if you will. I think the 2 kids that got in trouble were wearing wetsuits. If I understand correctly, they were bodyboarding and they were wearing wetsuits. That might have saved them because, Greg, the water temperature when that happened was 52 degrees. That's really cold.
Which is more dangerous at that kind of situation? Is that cold water or the fact that you're getting pulled out there?
I almost fear the cold water more. Because spending any amount of time in that cold water, you're going to lose strength so very, very quickly. And in fact, if you pull somebody out of a rip current, be aware of hypothermia. They're going to need to be treated for hypothermia really quickly. I mean, there's a lot of excitement when you pull somebody out of the water and whatever, but get them into a car, turn on the heater, use your body heat, throw blankets on them or something like that, because 52 degrees is just bone chilling. And sometimes it's even colder than that. So the fact that they had a wetsuit on was all to their favor.
So if you encounter one of these, say you're standing there, you don't identify it, you happen to be standing right when one is pulling out, so it's going to feel like it's pulling on your legs. Probably will maybe get that notion of undertow, even though that's not what it is.
Yes.
And you're going to feel that, which could in turn knock you over and take you out with this. Is that right?
That's correct.
Really
That's correct.
So say you do get caught up in a rip current, you fall over, the water's pulling you out. What do you do at that situation to try to get yourself out of it?
Well, why don't you go to that last slide with the green? There you go. So these are escape routes that I've penciled in. And I'm hoping that you're in the black arrow situation where you're just wading along and you say, rip current. I think I'll just wade away from this thing. And so you wade, 40 feet away and come back to shore. That's plan A, is to really spot them early. If you get swept out and you're in more where the orange arrows are, your strategy is to swim sideways, swim parallel to the beach, get out of the rip current, and then swim back in. That's really the way to get out. And if you're in where the red arrows are, you've been swept pretty far out, and you've got a farther swim. But don't fight them, swim out of them, and swim back to the beach.
So I think that's one of the key things too. I just wanted to mention there, so to reiterate that. So if you are caught up in one, don't swim against it and try to force your way back to shore by fighting against that, because you're just not going to be able to beat that.
You're going to get tired, you're going to get scared and whatnot, yeah.
And so once you find yourself in this, is it better to just lay on your back or to immediately try to shift 90 degrees to it?
I think the first thing is relax. Realize nothing is pulling you under. You're in a little current where water is running downhill, and you're smart enough to figure it out. And dog paddle, backstroke, I don't care what you do, just go sideways until you're out of it and get back in. So you don't need to do a heroic Olympic stroke or anything like that. Just ease yourself out of the current and get back to shore.
How far out can you end up going on one of these? How far out do they go?
Not to scare your audience, but on a big surf day, 15-foot surf and a proper sandy beach, these things can go out a third of a mile. But if it's that big, you're not going to be anywhere near the water. You're just going to be too scared to even get near it. So, on the Oregon coast, I'd say a couple 100 feet is probably typical.
Okay. And during that, you feel that happen, just ease yourself out of it at a 90-degree angle. Get out of that current, and then once you're out of that current, generally speaking, will the ocean essentially push you back to shore?
Not usually. If you're inside where the waves are breaking, yes. But if you're outside where the waves are breaking, you're going to have to get in under your own steam.
Gotcha. Okay, so once you're out of that, then you have some more decisions to make as far as getting back. But still, I think that's really important to know of how to identify these and what to do. Should you be caught up? We have that example, of the two teenagers from earlier this week. People can read that at kptv.com if you want to, and they've made it out okay. But there's also the idea of your pets getting caught up in that. And, I've got a dog that loves to jump there into the ocean. If that were to happen, if the dog was swept out, what is the ideal thing to do? Is it to go after them? That's probably not the right answer. I'm going to let you answer that one. But what do you do should your dog be caught up, for example?
I'm all in favor of spotting these and keeping your dog out of it. Once a dog is traveling out and you have the choice of jumping into 50-degree water to save your dog, that's a tough one, Greg. I can't advise you on that. Don't drown yourself to save your dog. But if you go down the beach to the side and encourage your dog to come toward you, then that will encourage them to swim sideways. And you can maybe trick them into saving themselves. Dogs are pretty resilient. They'll do all right out there.
Right. Yeah. So I like that idea, though. Yeah, get out down there and get the dog to start swimming towards you to get out of that current. Well, this is all really good information. What else do you think is important for people to know just about rip currents in general?
Teach your kids. Make it a game. There are so many YouTube videos on rip currents. You can spend 20 minutes and then get down to the beach and let them be your spotters, and they'll have that skill for life, and it'll be fun. And take the fear out of it and turn it into something fun. It's just part of our natural coastline.
Fantastic. Well, Charles, thank you as always for joining us and for the education on this. I think it's important for everybody. But also, where can people follow along with what you do and learn more about your work?
I am the ocean coach. I teach parents how to keep their kids safe on the beach. I do that with individual coaching. You can find me at theoceancoach.com.
Great. Charles, always great to have you on here.
My pleasure, Greg.
And for everybody watching, again, this is Fox 12 Now. If it's your first time, thanks for finding us. We are here every weekday with all kinds of different segments, educational segments like this. Sometimes we talk about events. Sometimes we do deeper dives on news stories you see on our other newscasts. We can even get a reporter in and do expanded coverage of something like that. So really, we've got a lot of freedom here for that. So if you have an idea, feel free to send me an email, fox12now@kptv.com. Coming up at 1:30 p.m., we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about a film. We've got a local filmmaker, Joanna Priestley, who's going to be joining us, who she has a new film out that's a documentary covering 20 years of Burning Man art. So this is going to be interesting, what all that entails. So we're going to be talking to her about that at 1:30. At 2 o'clock, we've got the Fox 12 Weather Podcast video edition. And if there's breaking news, we'll have that as well. So we've got a full afternoon here for you. So thanks for being here with us. I'll be off for about 10 minutes or so and then back. So whatever platform you're on, I'll see you right back there. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.